Hey everyone, in case you missed my announcement post that I made, I am moving soon, like in the next few days, so things are a little bit hectic, and this D23 announcement came out of nowhere, so this is going to be another one of those videos that's kind of short and has a green screen in the background for no discernible reason. We just got word that there's going to be a Disney/Marvel game showcase at D23 this year, which is pretty exciting when you think about everything that's been announced and rumored lately, and I just want to get right into what to probably expect and what I'm hoping from this showcase. Let's start with what they actually said would be included here. The description says, the digital showcase will feature incredible new content from Disney and Pixar games, Marvel games, Lucasfilm games, and 20th Century games. In addition to all new announcements, fans can expect new reveals from titles including Disney Dreamlight Valley, Marvel's Midnight Suns, and LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, as well as a sneak peek at an upcoming Marvel Ensemble game from Skydance New Media. So that's 4 games confirmed and then the studios that we should expect. An update for Midnight Suns makes sense, although I can't say I'm all that excited for it. We got word that it had received another hefty delay, and rumor has it hasn't been testing well, so that's not a big draw in my opinion. I assume the LEGO Star Wars news is going to be something DLC related, so fans of that game will enjoy that, but nothing too spicy. If you missed the Disney Dreamlight Valley announcement, it's described as a hybrid sim and adventure game filled with Disney characters. It's looking like the Sims Disney edition. It actually comes out in early access 3 days before this event, and it's free to access for Game Pass users, and then the official release is in 2023, free to play for everyone. You can also get early access if you pay for the Founders Pack, which makes this a free to play game that you only have to pay for if you want to play it in an unfinished state, which, yeah, that sounds about Disney. By far the most exciting confirmed game though is this new secret Marvel Ensemble project by Skydance New Media, which if you didn't know is Amy Hennig's new studio, who if you don't know is the writer behind the original 3 Uncharted games. Amy Hennig kind of feels like the Joss Whedon of video games, not in the sense that she's a creep mind you, but just like how Whedon was imperative in the fast quippy dialogue movement that's gained more and more steam in the last 2 decades and gets more irritating to hear every year. It feels like Amy really spearheaded the main character constantly talking to themselves movement in games, which has become characterized even by Hennig herself. Forspoken from the outside looks like one of the worst examples of this, and she's on that writing staff. Still, Hennig is proven in this industry and under the right circumstances can make some really amazing stuff, and if you guys remember, 8 months ago I actually said that Fantastic Four would be a perfect project for the studio to take on. They need genuine relationships with one another, and I think Amy Hennig as a writer is very clever, witty, and writes fantastic character interactions. She's the writer I would want on a Fantastic Four game, so if they're gonna do a Marvel title, fingers crossed it's that one. It probably won't be, but let me dream, okay? The notion that this will be an ensemble game makes that prediction even more likely. It feels like the X-Men or Fantastic Four are probably in the cards, and while both are making their way to the MCU soon, which means it's a perfect time for matching adaptations in other mediums, here's why I think the 4 have a better shot here. First of all, their ensemble is a little bit tighter than you'd have with the X-Men, and if the title is meant to be a narrative-driven action-adventure game that plays to Hennig's strengths, I think having a tighter squad with a distinctly familial relationship of arguing but eventually having each other's backs makes sense. I can already see how these characters are going to be written. The X-Men are a dysfunctional family in their own way, but their characters are a bit more diverse in personality, whereas the 4 are all different versions of obscenely arrogant but ultimately good at heart, and I feel like that's right in Amy's wheelhouse. I'd also just want to see this because I'm personally a big fan of Fantastic Four and they get no good representation anymore. I can't think of any F4 games off the top of my head that never even appeared in the popular Marvel fighting games. The movies suck. We gotta get something good going for them. We already have some X-Men representation in Midnight Suns and a standalone Wolverine game coming out. I want to see Marvel's first family take the world by storm again. If that's all we get from this showcase, a Fantastic Four announcement by Skydance, I'll be pretty happy, but there's a lot more that could show up here. Obviously the first games that come to mind are Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine, both by Insomniac, but I feel like these aren't as big of a lock as some people might think they are. Sony has a lot in the chamber right now. God of War's released this winter, they clearly have a marketing deal with Hogwarts Legacy which comes out in February, Forspoken is an exclusive, Final Fantasy 16 is nearing completion, Little Devil Inside should be coming out pretty soon, hopefully, and then obviously these 2 Marvel games and the PSVR 2 launch. Almost all of this stuff is set to come out roughly in the next calendar year aside from Wolverine, and they probably have God knows what else in store, which means that most people are expecting a Sony showcase in September. That'd be the same time as the big showcase of the last 2 years, which makes a lot of sense, and if that's the case, Spider-Man and Wolverine are much more likely to show up there, which, hey, I don't care which showcase it's announced at, as long as I get news in September, I'm a-okay. In the case that a September Sony event somehow doesn't happen though, I'm still not sure about these games showing up at D23. Sony always refuses to play nice with Disney with Spider-Man reveals for the movies. They're never announced at Comic-Con or D23 and added late to the ongoing Marvel slate, and they've also notoriously pulled PlayStation away from events like E3 in order to do their own showcases with a full focus on them, so scattering major announcements around doesn't match that energy. If they really don't have a showcase planned for this year and Spider-Man is an early 2023 game, which it might be since we haven't caught wind of other stuff releasing next year for Sony's first parties yet, indicating this is earlier on, then maybe this is the only real place that you can show it off outside of have a dedicated state of play, which is usually done much closer to release and after a bit more marketing, so there's still a chance. And maybe they'll play nicer with Wolverine, but remember, while Sony doesn't own the Wolverine rights specifically, they do own Insomniac, who's making the game, so the point I'm trying to make is these appearances are a lot more up in the air than it seemed at first glance. If they don't show up though, which is kind of the side that I'm leaning towards to be honest, there's got to be at least a few other announcements to justify this showcase existing. This is the first year that they're doing it, so they gotta have something planned. I think it's high time we saw Star Wars Jedi Survivor footage. This game was confirmed earlier this year. I think the rumor was that it was internally planned for release in 2022, but is now sitting between January and March of 2023, which is about 4 to 6 months from this expo, and we got almost nothing to go on with this game. I feel like it's all but a lock. Star Wars Eclipse, I doubt we'll see. That game was announced way too early. They said 3 to 4 years away at least in late 2021, so 2025 is seeming optimistic for this game. I really don't think we're seeing more out of that one for a while. Respawn is also overseeing a Star Wars strategy game that feels very early in development, so I don't know if we see that, but we could see a teaser trailer for their Star Wars FPS that was also announced this year. It's also in early development, but a 1-minute cinematic with a title confirmation wouldn't surprise me. Remember that Ubisoft is also working on an open world Star Wars game, which of course they are. We honestly have no indication of how far along that is, so it could go either way. Skydance is partnering with Star Wars on top of Marvel for a different project, but since these have been explicitly called the first and second projects out of Skydance, Star Wars being the second, plus the description mentions Skydance as Marvel project only and not 2 new titles from that studio, I'm gonna say that word on that game showing up at D23 outside of maybe a throwaway mention is practically impossible. Same goes for the last Star Wars project that's been announced, the KOTOR remake, because the studio behind it is struggling to the point that that game is either gonna be delayed by like 3 years or it's gonna be cancelled or passed on to a different studio altogether. I don't think there's any way we see news of this game on September 9th. There's also 2 rumors for Marvel games that have gained some attention the past few months, Iron Man and Black Panther, both coming out of EA and both being initially leaked by Jeff Grubb, who is one of the most reliable sources out there. He mentioned Black Panther by name and called the second game another Marvel game, to which Tom Henderson, another trusted leaker, mentioned that he'd heard from people that it was an Iron Man title, but to take that with a grain of salt since he hadn't fully confirmed it yet. The Iron Man game is rumored to use the flight mechanics of that one BioWare project that I'm pretty sure never came out. I'm like 99% sure this never released and we all just had one massive fever dream because it really doesn't feel real at all. And the Black Panther game would take place after T'Challa dies and has you taking on the mantle of the new Black Panther, which I gotta say, I hate that. I know Chadwick Boseman passing away was tragic, and I know people are split on whether they're okay with the mantle being passed on in the MCU or if they would have preferred the role to be recast, especially after Chadwick's brother spoke out about it, but at least that's a tough situation that led to a tough decision, right or wrong. Here there's no reason to kill off T'Challa outside of making it seem closer to the MCU, and that just bugs me because T'Challa is such an important character in the comics. I'm not the most well-versed comic reader, I'm a solid intermediate, but from my understanding, T'Challa is as important and oftentimes more important than Tony Stark in the comics. I know that whoever takes up the mantle in the game will also be of African descent, obviously, but is it not weird to take the iconic black superhero from the Marvel universe, make him a symbol for young kids, and then replace him with somebody else due to unfortunate circumstance, and replace him again somewhere else where that circumstance doesn't even apply? I don't know, I really hate that. I hope that that part of the game's description is actually inaccurate, but either way, of the 2 rumors, this is probably the more substantiated, and even though it's probably in early development, it might be far enough along to get its first trailer, so I could see it appearing at D23. A few extra things. I wanted to note that Lucasfilm's game's involvement could also mean some news on Return to Monkey Island. I know that Ron Gilbert said that he wouldn't be posting about the game online because of the harassment that some fans were throwing the team's way because of the art style. Super classy move from those fans, by the way, really show you care. But he has been posting a bit of footage here and there, and it would make sense to have a release date trailer in September since the game keeps saying 2022, and that's kind of coming to an end. We're either getting a delayed trailer or a release date trailer soon, so the times match up. Lucasfilms also means that Indiana Jones game might make an appearance. It was announced almost 2 years ago and is coming out of Machine Games and Bethesda, so Xbox exclusivity might be in the cards, although they've been non-committal about exclusivity questions since the acquisition. And since Xbox's 2022 showcase is already passed and the next chance for the indie game to show up would likely be in 10 months with the 2023 showcase, I think this would be a nice way to get some more information on it since, again, this is sort of a theme here, we got almost nothing on this game as of now. Finally, 20th Century Games is listed as one of the players involved. There's not much that we know about what they could be doing because their games division seems to have gone defunct and then returned under a new name recently. Who knows what's going on there, but we might see a surprise from one of their properties as well. What I'm actually hoping for though is that we don't hear about any games outside of the ones that I just mentioned, because it's become pretty clear recently that Disney games are being announced and rumored way faster than they're coming out. We are backed up on Marvel and especially Star Wars games, and so many have been announced through blog posts or 20-second teasers with no follow-up for years. I really don't want anything from this expo to make me go, whoa, they're working on this, or they got this new studio on board. Just give me the stuff that you've teased and maybe a Daredevil game. If you're gonna surprise me with anything, make it a Daredevil game, please. Anyways, I said this video was gonna be shorter, and it's not, but let me know what you guys want to see out of this showcase, what you expect to be there, old buried games, new announcements, whatever. Leave it in the comments. If you're new here, subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.